It's Mongoose Carlsen, world number 1 versus Fabiano Caruana, and for some reason no one is talking about it. We possibly know why. We're going to get to that in game 2. First, game 1, it opened with an aggressive Sicilian from Magnus. This is the speed chess quarterfinals, played a couple of days ago. I was over in Wales seeing some clients, then I got ensnared by Claudia. It was a long weekend. We're back at the board now. Let's have some fun here. Speed chess, Rossolimo from Fabiano. Of course, Magnus builds the banana hammock. He's shattered, but still, tired Magnus is top 3. Up there with drunk Magnus, blindfold Magnus, also Magnus himself, top 1, 2, 3, 4, everything. Now we see the rook come to e1, e5 from Magnus, going for a dark squared grip, and Fabi shatters the structure, tries to play against that bishop pair by having the pawn breaks. But look what he does here. He plays some normal stuff, tries to secure c4 for his knight, but soon gets a very stinky pawn structure. First, Magnus defends this one. Now we see the knight rotating round. You're gonna see Magnus go to town with that pony. He loves to maneuver, loves to practice in his own time with his hobby horse. Fabi develops here. Queen is x-rayed, h3 on the board, rook b8, and she gets out the way, sliding over to b1. But there is this plan where you stick a bishop here, queen here, bit of b3 action, maybe move the rook off the long diagonal, knight back to h2, whoops, and then play for f4 at the right moment. Slow plan, long plan, but a good plan. However, Fabi doesn't go for the f4 break, plays queen b1, x-ray protecting d3, knight a6 round, and pawn c3. That is an ugly structure. How are you going to liberate with these two pawns clamping, plus the bishop, plus the rook? Nasty, nasty. And Magnus just gangs up. First controls g5, worth it, despite lifting the king's kilt. Now rook d1 played, bishop e6. We see why Magnus started with f6, bishop e3 on the board, and Magnus just goes for the double stack. Simple chess. Fabi's pushing these pawns, but really, where are you going with that? Bishop tucking back here, and Fabi is just thrashing, repeating with the rook there, while Magnus improves the position. g3 to cover holes, h6, king g2, because obviously knight back to c7 here, and now Magnus is fully geared up for pawn f5. This is why he moved the knight, so the queen can protect the pawn some more. This is why he went h6 to cover g5. It's on the cards, and if it lands, it's dangerous. It's why knight h4, best move far and away. But Fabi plays the stinker. Pawn h4, voluntarily creating this Swiss cheese on the light squares. Horrible stuff. f5 from Magnus, and Fabi makes it worse with this awful move. The position is now collapsing on the light squares. g5 from Magnus, excellent, because after takes, one of the better moves in a terrible position, Magnus takes here. Level material, but horrible pins. Think queen f7 to f5 as well, or even d5 in some lines. Really simple, really effective chess. If you try and take the time to break the pin, you can already start doing stuff like this simply, or breaking through here first. It's really bad. Let's go to the game. Fabi tries to give the pawn. Magnus doesn't even take. That one's perennially weak, so he goes for this f5 pawn first. Rook h1 breaks the pin. You can't take with the queen just yet. You shed a bishop, so we get rook takes on d3. The most staunch defense is rook a4 apparently, but we get this and this, and you cannot take here because bang, 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 lose a knight, lose the game. Awful stuff. Tactics flow from a better position. Knight stumbling back. It's miserable. What are you doing back here, thinks Dad. You were supposed to make something of yourself. Fabi's now shuffling. Desperate defense. Pawn collapsing. Rook saves itself. Don't blunder your queen. Fabi holds on, but only for one more move. Here he resigns. You're losing an exchange if you come this way. If you come here, looks absolutely dreadful. Knight d5 back is strong. Basically, Fabi had had enough. His material down. Magnus has got the attack. it's truly game over. Let's jump to this one. Second game I'm going to bring you in this evening's video. Another Sicilian. This time Magnus is white here, and you're about to see why. This game, this match, has not been talked about that much. Basically, they are both bouncing along, riding that blunderbuss together. What is this from Magnus on move 8? Can you see the winning move for black here? It's Queen A5, check. I mean, these guys need to get on their puzzle rush. It's a clean pawn. They both kind of realise this when they get to the bullet section of the match. Wow, but not found. Fabi believes Magnus, so he covers the pawn. I mean, I wish you or I had this kind of aura, right? Just blunder stuff. Opponent believes. Now we get check. Magnus picks up the bishops. Lovely. Queen F6, strongest apparently. Looks a little bit weird. This is the move that was selected. Not loved by the engine, as you can see. Of course they throw in this first. It's modern chess. And now Queen F3. This is why C5 was a little bit suspect. Apparently, Rook B8, Queen C3 is strongest. But this was played. Allows Fabi back in with Queen F6. Pawn C3, very natural. Blunts the Queen, etc. Now after Bishop B7, we see Fabi playing something you surely shouldn't do against Magnus. Queen E5 check. Queen F5 was also an option. Queen's now leaving the board. Takes. C4 could be a threat in some lines. So Magnus hates it that much. He pushes the explosive C4. But look at the dark squared hole. Obviously Fabi now plays for it. First F6, kicking back the bishop. And another stinker from Magnus. Bishop F4. It's a huge blunder. Can you find a winning tactic for black here? It's bishop takes on G2. And if you take here, then there's the check. And you win a piece, and it's positional domination. And if you try and take the knight first, well then of course you take the rook. That's an exchange. It's a lost position. So that was a winning shot. Missed, of course. It's this game. It's this match. Bishop E3 back. Knight jumping anyway. Magnus has to chop here. Gives his bishops right back. But before you can say Magnus Carlsen hanging upside down like a bat, he pushes the pawn. Fabi goes for a mini bomb cloud diagonally. The rook lifts into the game here. Pawn A5, another terrible move according to our trusty friend here. Looks kind of natural to break up the pawns, but apparently you can just take, and it's a very powerful pawn. Rook A8, what's the move? Rook A3, defending. Looks like C5 possible at some point. Push with A6. Okay, didn't click down the line, but that's why it's no good with the rook on A3. But again missed. Magnus believes Fabi this time. This rook comes into the game. We get an exchange. Bishop E4. Attack on the pawn. Of course, you can't go rook B1 or takes here. So rook B3 played. And now rook B6. Apparently best to immediately set up the connect 4. But this on the board. And this is the point. If takes, takes here. However, although this is winning a pawn and it looks great, B5 is very strong. Magnus misses it. Of course he does. He goes king D2. This rook now slides to the C file. Rook A3 on the board, looking to invade. And so Fabi blocks it here. Pawn F3. Bishop has a bit more breathing room. Centralizes. Bishop A6. Magnus is all in on these pawns now over here. And the queenside pressure. Black's winning through the center. We now see rook B8. Pawn now pushed. Rook A7 sliding over. B6. Huge progress. So Fabi drops back here. F4 apparently strongest. But this was played. And it allows Fabi another shot here to pretty much end the game for all intents and purposes. Pawn D6 as I'm indicating. Because you break them up. King comes around. And these are going to be dropping. Stuff like this. If you don't take. If you push. Will take like this. It's just not working. So in the game, this strongest, but this played. Now we see bishop b5 and Magnus is getting his a-file pressure. His b-pawn running. Fabi sets up this wonderful connect 4. He wins 4 new horseshoes. just what he needed right now in time for the winter months ahead. We see rook a7 invading, going for the crash through, rook b7 to cover, but Magnus now turns it on. Goes up a gear here. Plays pawn to c ships, a beautiful shot, because if you carry on with this move, then pawn takes and the queen's being made. If you take like this, queen's still being made. You've blocked the bishop. Take like this, swap them off, queen's being made. So no good actually taking here. Again, if takes here, you get similar kind of tactics, right? You can't do this, or if you try this, no good. You basically have to take the pawn on b6, and that's what we see in the game directly. c7 is a winning move. Magnus goes for this one. He's about to win a bishop, so king e6 of course, but now can you spot a brilliant move as called by Chess.com? It's rook takes on d5, and if you take with the king, played in the game, the pawn marches. Rook can't get back. Rook also can't get over. King can't get back. So this was played. Queen is made, but okay. This does take some winning. Fabi picks up another pawn. The problem, the king is terribly exposed. However, Fabi didn't want to break his structure, so he keeps the two connected. Can he set up a fortress? Well, as we well know, Magnus Carlsen does not believe in fortresses. He mops up the h-pawn here, gets it running. Fabi, to his credit, gets his d-pawn running there. Deirdre goes all the way down the board, but so does Harriet. Not sure what that name was, but we made something up. We end up in this position, both players making queens here, leaving the board. Now it's queen versus rook and pawn, of course, but Magnus in control. He's checking away. He's trying to build up time on the clock. The trouble for Fabi is he's the one that has to constantly tiptoe carefully. Don't walk into a fork of rook and king. Lose that rook. Keep them tight together. However, easier said than done when your opponent's probing. Bringing in the king. More checks. King staying with the rook. Fabi doing a great job. Low on time, but he blinks. Blunders the pawn. King desperately with the rook now. He's shuffling around, but here, finally, move 114. He cracks, because after check, the rook's dropping by force. If you come to a light square here, then there's check, and you're picking up the rook. And if you sidestep this way, well, you actually get mated down here. So therefore, this is the third option played in the game, but still check. Not a mate, but the rook is dropping off the board. Mate soon to follow. Magnus takes it home, mainly in the bullet portion of the match, to be honest. He pulled away big time, but far from their best chess from both players, really. Hope you enjoyed. Good to be back at the board here, and have a look at the video on screen if you want to see some more epic chess. Thanks very much for watching, and see you soon. Cheers.